Hi guys, Dan Bradbury here, and I'm super excited for this week's podcast interview. In a moment, I'll be introducing you to Leighton from Lean for Fitness, which is a small chain of small group personal training studios. Just kind of hit trading. It's the premium end of the market, and I've known Leighton for many years. I think when he was maybe only at one site or maybe two, and he's subsequently grown it to over 5. And he's worth listening to. I love Leighton because it's the real deal. And what I mean by that is a lot of people talk about big gains or big wins or, they make money from a big exit, whereas Leighton has been steady, persistent, and got epic results. Ultimately, just to preempt it, this is somebody that's built a 7-figure net worth, excluding the business valuation. And the business is worth 7 figures. And we're going to get into that today. And just from a pragmatic, in the trenches look at how somebody that takes business by the horns, upskills himself, and gets phenomenal results. I'm delighted to have him. So, Leighton, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Dan. Nice intro to live up to it.
Yeah, maybe not. It's all downhill from here. But Leighton, I probably said it briefly. Perhaps we'll elaborate a little bit more for those that are not familiar, because obviously you've got this group with multiple different locations. I've also owned, but sold a few different gyms and fitness businesses in the past. But tell us, what is your business? What do you do?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. I'm working with men and ladies. We have small warehouse units, which are between 1,500 and 2,500 square feet. So the size of a very large house, or 1.5 times the size of a very large house. That's the units. You'll recognize them on small industrial estates. And we do small group personal training, and we get results through accountability, enforcing nutrition, and HIIT training, basically. And I've got a team that delivers all of that.
Yeah, great. And I'm sure plenty of people listen to this participate in versions of this. So does it work? Do you now work on, is it a recurring membership model? Is it kind of like a monthly fee? How does it work in terms of, is it a different price point depending upon the frequency, and what's kind of like the price range? What's the average customer spending to be a member?
Yeah, so our memberships, they're going to range because we've got a couple of models inside of our models slightly, for example, a larger group, you would pay slightly less than if you were in smaller group model, basically. So the price range is going to go from £120 a month to around about 250. So, and that is not PT, that's small group PT. So that's the price range.
Yeah, got it. And so take us back to the start. When did this business start, and how did you get into it? Was it the typical, I've done this for a job, I love it, I'll open my own place, or was it something else?
There's a nice little story, which is just to do with a couple of people with bad attitude that ends up making something better. So I used to be in a commercial gym, which I won't say what it is. I'm not sure if it's still quite going now. So I was in a commercial gym space, and I was with my client, Mary. The majority of my clients were, I want to say, in the 40 to 60 age range. And we were trying to have a conversation, as you do with your one-to-one clients, and we couldn't hear each other. So I went to the front desk, and there's a young guy whose boss I wasn't. I wasn't his boss because I was self-employed. Told me in certain terms that the music wasn't coming down, and he was about 17, 18. I looked at Mary and just thought, this is the wrong environment. Of quite posy. People just, what I thought was really wrong is they just weren't treating each other right. You had all these like little groups of guys lifting heavy weights, and ladies that might want to be looking young and really looking the part. And all these groups didn't really mix together, and none of them really liked each other. And basically I just decided from there that I would, if my clients would go with me, I'd strike out on my own. So I asked all of them, about 40. And 98% said yes, and 98% did come.
Wonderful. So from that idea to setting up your own first location, how long did that transition take? And out of curiosity, what was the startup cost for that first site?
It was super budget. It was a credit card and some money that I'd saved. So it took a little while. It was actually difficult to get a unit, and I was completely unknown, had no real, background if I've had a unit or so forth. So I had to actually get a unit that had been vacant for a long time. I did a bit of research, basically. I had to sort of learn about it. And I won't say the place that I learned about how you open a studio or a gym, but it's the place that we first met and you were speaking. basically. And that's how I sort of got to know you and came into your little world. That there taught me about how to do it, how to sell programs, what you need to consider for opening a studio. And I spent a good chunk of money to learn all of that. And that basically helped me get prepared because I was on a trajectory. I'd implemented all of that stuff and I was doing well. I ended up being up for their awards that year, basically on the stage. And then from there, I went and found a unit and eventually convinced a landlord to take a punt on me because his unit had been empty for 18 months. And basically started with, hardly any money, hardly any equipment, hardly anything other than a bunch of clients who liked me.
Right, nice. Well, I think, so I'm going to jump around a little bit, but take us forward in time because most people, when they set up a business, especially if they're the service provider, they get going and, spitting sawdust quite literally in this example, but, they bootstrap it. And in most cases, the first period is quite tough because effectively they are, it's just a job. They've replaced their job and now they work for themselves. The cliche, they now work for a lunatic sort of situation. But at some point, there was an inflection, there was a change, there was a shift that allowed you to switch to multiple sites. And there's normally a story that goes behind that. So what was like the inflection point when you realized that it could go beyond just this kind of one location and replacing your income working for yourself?
Yeah, there's quite a lot of bits that happen, but from the initial, what I had as an advantage, which most people don't have, most people might open a location and start with zero. That is a horrible place to start up because you've got costs, probably way less when you start on your own, but you've got costs of a building and business rates and all these other things. And if you've got zero clients, it could be a tough grind. I was fortunate that I had this 40 clients, which basically covered my costs, which were in the region of, I don't mind saying this bit, it was for $5 or $6 grand a month, something like that. And I made little to no money in the first year. I was working for my beliefs, like that this could work out. Wonderful guy called Andy, I've got to mention him, basically supported me on the way through, and he just liked my idea and came in virtually for no money, fitted lights, helped me decorate it. At one stage was like, I want to help you out, so I will happily just sweep if you want me to. Andy's now a significant person in my company near the top, helps me sort of run everything. So there's that initial phase. And then where it evolved is wanting to evolve and then learning about marketing and then at some stage outsourcing marketing, getting real expertise help because it's pretty hard to get marketing right. You can waste a lot of money. And then starting to get some attraction with your programs and starting to build the membership base. As you build it from 40 to 50 to 60 by having a great service, you don't lose hardly any clients, especially with one-to-one PT and small group. Sooner or later, you're going to be dog-tired at the start. I had a new baby incoming or arrived at 3-4 months and I was as motivated as a person could be. I was there 14 hours a day. I'd have little sleeps in the unit on the lunch break when required. I think all of my clients probably felt sorry for me and they could see what I was putting into this. So that's another reason that they didn't leave. And eventually I started to drip in. I could afford a part-time trainer. One stage, Andy was doing training for me as well, just to give me that one day or half a day. And then I could get admin done and start to move into focusing maybe 2 days a week doing sales, etc. What I have to say with all of that is I've always been really heavy into learning. And I learned about how to sell. I learned across time how to copyright. I learned how to do these things which cost you your time and a lot of time in order to get the results. Once you add those pieces together, you've got the ability to get your clients at a reasonable cost and then keep them and then grow. And as you grow, you can afford more different things, whether it be an administrator to take away some of these response emails and things, part-time staff initially, whether it's trainers, so then eventually you can extract yourself from that, work on the business, develop and evolve. There's quite a big step moves further. You need significant growth before you can consider more locations. And in my case, I would want to say I got lucky, but I got lucky because I tried lots of different things that didn't work, find the things that did. And I hit across sort of a couple of programs and, one of them took off like a rocket. And then at that point, that's when I drafted in Will, my current business partner, for sales, and we could see at the rate that we were moving at. I was on your program at this stage, Dan, when I made this shift, allowed us to just have the margin to be able to grow. I was discussing this earlier with someone this morning, and a lot of people will struggle to grow because in order to move from one location to two, you need infrastructure and you need to be able to afford the infrastructure, and it usually comes straight out. So you've got to kind of decide, do I want this amount of money in this life and I'm happy here? Or do I want more growth and be willing to take a pay cut in order for that forward movement to happen? So hopefully I'm describing how you jump from one to two, but it's not a jump. It's a lot of work. And then you layer in hiring people and they take care of different things. And that frees you up the time to do the things which can allow you to have a new location.
Yeah, I love this, Leighton. I mean, I alluded to this at the start, and I like to think on this podcast, I bring real versions, because while it's sexy and there's an allure of people kind of having some magical, they find a massive location and, with a load of clients and the business owner is, retiring and offers to give it them for £1 and, like kind of pie in the sky stuff, which I can already hear like some people listening to go, no, that happened. I know somebody that happened to, and I'm like, yeah, okay. But, the exception proves the rule. And what I love about this is, I think a reason a lot of people really, business owners, the majority of business owners are broke and are always broke and never build any net worth. And then the longer that goes on for, the more they have an increasing desire for some big payday someday downstream. And that's why people don't build wealth, because they don't set the money inside. They're not sensible. They don't invest. They're going to go, oh, well, I somehow need to get this no money down, like debt, leverage, risk. And whereas what I love about you is, I mean, you just said it as it is. Ultimately, growth typically, in most cases, requires cash, right? So unless you're, a funded startup, in which case it's costing you equity, like if it's self-funded, especially businesses, you get the highest return, but like in a lot of cases, the banks aren't willing to lend, at least not in the early days. So therefore, it is your own profit reinvested. And it's a mental shift where people kind of go, oh, the business made, in your early days, whatever, 50 grand or 100 grand profit. And then you're going to go, okay, but you made 100 grand profit. You can dividend all that out and pay your tax and have it for your lifestyle, or you can live off half of it and use the other half to have enough to bootstrap, the next site, which means that you've now got the income potential to go from 100K to 200K and so on and so forth. So I absolutely love that. So talk to me about, was it just rinse and repeat? And I suspect that you said there was multiple parts. There was one that you were constantly learning and upskilling in different areas. So what were the areas in which you feel that you need to upskill, and how did you mentioned copywriting as an example, or selling? What were some of the other areas where you needed to upskill, and how did that carry over into making better business decisions?
Yeah, sure. So I want to say some shifts that happen before we dive into the business bit. I'll try and do this bit really quickly. And some people here, hopefully, everybody that gets attracted to your podcast should be wanting a much better net worth. Once they understand what it is, that's what they should be gunning for. Wealth is your net worth. So where it started on the first day we met, Dan, when I came to your second time we met, when I came to your sort of short day there and we did some investigation and it all made sense and so forth, was you gave me a spreadsheet that tracked my net worth, which I've copied and given to a few.
Yeah.
That's a massive key to your net worth. I want to kind of put that bit aside there when people are like, well, how do you magically get net worth? It's not magically through, like you say, in a big exit or so forth. Most people won't get that. It's to do with, putting money into assets that generate you cash, might be property or other things, so forth. And it's really by tracking it and then being competitive with yourself to get it higher. So that's the first bit in terms of net worth. And then the different sections that you need different sets of skills as a business owner. And what happens with me, I believe I morphed into a different person. I used to be like, I was my client's personal trainer. I knew all the ins and outs of their life. I knew, we'd do favors for each other. One of my clients put the mirrors up for free in my unit. Still, some of them are really good friends to this day. One of them's my accountant. And there's that different type of relationship, which means you're able to sort of have low churn. It's probably because you've got that great relationship. That cannot be scaled, and you cannot guarantee that's going to happen with anybody that you employed. So I had to change to being a different type of person, which is the other skills that I needed. I kind of really don't recognize the person that's really interpersonal anymore. I'm more colder, straighter. What's the numbers? What do I need to know? I'm trying to, all the time with my team, remove myself from the environment so I can step back and look at the facts and try and make a decision and not be influenced by a member who's grumpy about something and they're in my ear, which then influences the decision so I can make better decisions. So you have to change in terms of what person you are. If you've gone from being the one-man band running something to becoming a business owner, the skills are the things that you said from the very beginning, Dan, is know your financial scorecards, know your numbers. Something that I was going over this morning is management accounts. I've got multiple locations. I need to understand the big picture, what's going on each individual one, a few days after the month, how much profit did they actually make, which are doing better than others. It's all of the big picture. So your financial scorecards, your cash flow, your P&L, profit and loss, and your balance sheet. So I'm not going to explain those bits. You have to find out about them for yourselves via Dan, etc. If you don't know those things already, but they will be vital in becoming a good business person. Let's look at some of the other skills. Marketing. You either learn to do it yourself, but you do need to do it well. If you're going to acquire clients, you can learn it yourself could go and learn how to run a social media course, and that's going to be tricky to get right because social media platforms are constantly changing. Can you be an expert in running your business and managing your staff and running your books, as well as keeping up with all the latest things that are changing in social media? Because otherwise what can happen is you can be something that works, stops working. If you don't have the attention to work out how it's working, you can start losing oodles of money really quickly on not knowing it's working. What I would say is inside of marketing, certain things you need to kind of learn expertise in. You need to learn what's the message to your client, who is your client, what's the call to action, what are the things that they're concerned about that you can prove written to them that you can help to solve. So there's that part in terms of your message and your ideal customer and these types of things. And then there is another phase to it, which is included in that, which I think people think very little about, which is copywriting, which is fine skill. Once you get it right, it will make it easier for people to come to you. When I send an email, my customers should know I'm the right person for them, maybe in a tagline, maybe in the message, maybe they think I'm in their head because I'm talking about the things they're worried and concerned about.
Right.
So that's essentially copywriting. You can pay somebody else to do it for you. But I think in your industry, usually, if you're any good in your industry, you should know your customer better than somebody else who works for 20 different industries copywriting, basically. So you should get inside of that better. And then the thing that we talked about, I was on a podcast with you before, Dan, a while back when things were starting to take off. We were talking about numbers, data. These are the things which tell you the truth, tell you the answers. If you can become more and more of an expert in your numbers and you have a lot of data and you become an expert in interpreting what that means, it signposts where you should go next.
Right. I mean, just to jump on there, I mean, Leighton, obviously I'm biased and we're cut from the same cloth, but the analogy to health and fitness is obvious, in the sense of numbers, whether it be financial or just all metrics and KPIs. Ultimately, to have a better business, you need to make better decisions. And to make better decisions, you need to be able to get the information, and then you need to analyze the information and make the decisions accordingly. And another piece that we'll come on to that I'll just put a pin in for now is your leverage is going to come from capital or team members, right? So you're making a profit, and how do you reallocate that profit? Is it a new site? Is it new kids? Is it in new marketing promotions? Is it additional hires? And then team members are the people to execute the ideas. Because like you said, it was a good example. You learn a social platform, it's good, but there's so much change going on. You can't do all that yourself. You'll become the sticking point. So for me, the meta skill is numbers. And it was funny when you said, people listening to your message. A lot of people drawn to this podcast, if that resonates with you, it's like, yeah, my people are typically people that say, wow, being good at selling and marketing by itself isn't getting me the outcome that I want. And if you look at the people that build 7-figure net worth or higher and keep it. They build profitable enterprises with 7-figure, 8-figure valuations and keep it and maintain it over time. You'll be pretty hard pushed to find the people in that camp that aren't financially literate. The people who get significant wealth, who are financially illiterate, are the Mike Tysons of this world who make $100 million, or the Nicolas Cages. They have all these fees, but then they abdicate to somebody else to manage the financials, and then they end up going broke. So I love it. So I suppose let's dive a little bit deeper into metrics, but I do also want to have a brief chat about team and also what's next. And I've also just seen the time, so we'll have to be speedy. What's your process for gathering data? Right? As in, how did you figure out which metrics to measure? What frequency are you looking at that? Are the team inputting it to you? Are you collating it yourself? Give us an idea for how that works. Because like I said, you've got 5 sites. Or the sites are spread across a wide geographical location. How do you centralize that data gathering?
I think the classic running of a business is going to be scorecards. You have to have metrics, and that should have a frequency of weekly, let's say, in terms of, so a scorecard, for those that don't know, is you're going to have the task that somebody does, and then the scorecards to check that they're doing the task, and the tasks obviously add up to the output that you're trying to get. So you have the frequency of that. Because the only important thing I needed to do as I scaled, and I thought about this a long time ago, is I needed to make sure that a standard close to what I was doing could be delivered by more and more and more people as we went. So you develop systems, processes that just deliver consistently is good enough. That's kind of the key to it. You can be a superstar PT or hairdresser or whatever, and that's not going to get you your bigger business. So you've got that. And then in terms of metrics, my current scale now, and it's getting harder to remember earlier, what is it like when it was 2, is currently I have other people collate that data for me. I've got 2.5 salespeople, and they're collating all of these different numbers, whether it is funnel, how many leads come into the top, how many do you get scheduled, what percentage show, what percentage do you convert from there. And that's, as you can see, starting to stack quite a lot of data really, really quickly. And when you're doing that on 4 or 5 locations at once, it's even more data. So having different people in your team collate all of those things. And once you've done that, this might be further down the line, and not trying to come across as arrogant. At some stage, you'll build a dashboard, and you'll build maybe one dashboard or a couple of dashboards. You might have a dashboard for key areas, departments, and then you might have a company dashboard, which I'll look at on a Monday, which will cover how is this thing doing. It's like a cockpit of an airplane, Dan, and it's basically all of your dials, which is letting you know how different things are performing. If a number is really way off, that zeroes you into, there's a problem there, investigate further, what do we do about it, basically. So that's the way that you use data, and you get things wrong along the way to get them right. You learn that what you shouldn't measure anymore. I'll give you an example. If we used to measure the reasons why somebody didn't want to come and train with us or something, or the reason they don't want to come in. And I thought about it later. I'm like, who cares? They don't want to work with you ever. Like, why are you measuring why they don't want to work with you? What useful is there for that? So it's like, we don't measure that anymore at all. And that's what you do with these different things. You measure things that eventually get cut.
You got an example, Leighton? I'm curious, because you and I are both kind of, or you've said you've kind of learned to be more numbers focused, more data focused. You use the term core, but more analytical is how I would summarize that. And I think that's helpful, because a lot of people just make decisions, do something, only later to find out they were solving the wrong problem. And yet, of course, you just pointed out with the data, if there's a problem on one of the dashboards or with one of the metrics, that allows you to zone in. That's where the problem lies. A bit like, the health and fitness analogy is obvious. Somebody wants to get to a target weight or body fat or whatever, and then they're doing the training program, and then the needle's not moving. Well, they know that their calories, the inputs, need to come down, right? Have you got an example of, perhaps, was there ever a time when you were doing something and it was only that you realized that you were trying to solve for the wrong problem, and then you shifted, or the data told you, no, you need to go down this direction? Does anything come to mind?
Yeah, so in the earlier times of marketing, there was a focus on, wow, that's a big number to spend on marketing. But actually, what you should focus on marketing is ROAS, return on ad spend. How much money did you get back from the money you spent? And then in between that is all of your people and your costs, which brings you down to your true ROI at the bottom. What's return on investment? So what's left over at the bottom? That's kind of an example there. Whereas before you might have been focused on don't spend too much.
Yes.
Or you might have been focused on, oh, it's really great. Look, I've just made £10,000 worth of sales in this month, let's say. Well, hold on a second. Are you net on those sales, or did it cost you £11,000 to make your £10,000 sales once you've taken into account your staff and everything else? So there's an example there. There's something I was looking at this morning, which I think probably 90% of people who are in like the gym space, and even if they've got their own unit, they probably wouldn't be able to tell me this second, what's your gross margin? And then after that, what's your net margin at the bottom of that? And if those numbers aren't right, it doesn't matter if your studio is making 350,000 a year, basically, because if you're keeping nothing, so what?
Right.
Basically, these are the places where you end up leveling up and have to identify what's the really, really important number. And I think there's something that's really important, which is you do have to have staff in order to grow and scale, but you really always have to keep one eye on how much does that cost you. It's not unlimited. There's a certain point where you do have to work out, is it worth having this staff person in here in order to grow? You have to make a punt, but then you do have to sort of manage your numbers. What's one thing that always sticks with me that you taught me, Dan, is like manage your expenses like your life depends upon it, because they can eat all your cash, they can eat all of your future potential, it can eat everything. And I'm not going to name names, but you gave me an example of when you were staffed for growth. And I've had an example of people in my business telling me we can't make changes just in case we grow soon, so we need to staff for. And I've been the person that's like, well, that's not where we're at right now. We're at here right now, and that's obviously eating your bottom line. So it's finding the balance of those things. How long can you wait for before you have to say no to certain things?
Yeah, I think the key is timings, or a key. I wish I could make it simpler, but I can't. I think the business owner, you've got to be adept to that. So here's an example, going back to the ROAS thing. Sometimes you can make a decision. You go, oh, we spent this much money on ads. We only got this much back. That's not good. Cut the ads. But the mistake is you go, well, you only made this much back within 30 days. Oh, we didn't make all our money back, so stop it. It's not got a good return. When actually you're going to go, well, if the average person buys monthly, but they stick for 3 years, then the return could be epic. And yet people will cut ad spend because they go, no, that's not working. And of course, this isn't just about ad spend. And inversely, sometimes people kid themselves and justify, well, they might stick for 17 years and then it works. Or this staff member saves me 700 hours a week. And so you've got to be analytical and have different lenses and look with a different time frame. And you all tie that back to your point from earlier about, you said spreadsheet. The name that I use for the spreadsheet for net worth is personal balance sheet. You're kind of going, at the end of the day, one of the lenses I want to look through is the business making you richer personally? And that's independent of the business. Because again, I don't want to kid myself that all my wealth's tied up in this business. It's like, has my personal assets outside of the limited company that I might own, is it growing or is it declining? I'm curious, Leighton. I remember when we started working together, your net worth was, well, it wasn't the biggest. Do you mind sharing what it was back then?
No problem. It was 50,000 or less, Dan. When we met, it was under 50K.
Yes, it was under 50K. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not being presumptuous towards, the majority of the UK has a net worth of less than 50K. But for business owners, that's clearly not a significant net worth. And I won't ask you to be precise, but I remember when you told me, you sent me a message and I was elated for you because you were like, oh, I've hit it. I've done it. I've hit 7 figures. And there was, obviously that's over a multiple year time period. But I remember asking you once and you were, oh, I'm close. We're quite close soon. And then I remember you sent me the message and I was elated. So over a relatively short space of time, you got the 7-figure net worth. And yet a lot of people will go, well, it took, 2 years, 5 years, whatever, that's too long. And yet those same people stay broke year after year, and you see them 10 years later, and they've still got a sub 50K net worth. So I do take my hat off to you, sir, for that. I'm not saying it solves everything, but for those listening, that relentless focus on the metric and the dashboard and the numbers that matter So you're not kidding yourself because you've had your turnover spike, but you're not making any more money, or you're making more money, but then it's constantly reinvested into stuff that doesn't work out. You're building the business's balance sheet, you're building the business's profitability and cash flow, but you're also keeping a chunk of that for yourself. So you can make yourself financially free and independent. So epic. Well done, Leighton. We're at closing time, and I'm aware we've both got commitments, so I want to be respectful of your time. Any final thoughts, Leighton? What would you say? What would you say to the version of you, the earlier you, before we met? So there's somebody listening to this podcast that's got a business that's got aspirations to grow. They're going, yeah, I'd like to build my wealth, add 7 figures to my personal wealth. I'd like to add 7 figures or multiple 7 figures to my business valuation. But they're just kind of listening to a few podcasts here and there and getting ideas. What would you say are key takeaways you'd give them? Either it could be a repeat of something you've already said on the call, or it could be something new.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason, I'll be honest, that I came on the podcast, Dan, and this is for people who are starting and want to do better, because I wanted to give a little bit of a payback to you, because it would be quite easy for me to hide away at home and not want anyone, my staff or anyone else, to know that I'm doing well in an area and I've built up this net worth because, through fear. But ultimately, you played such a huge part in that, which is the programs that I've been through with. And what I mean by that is you have to learn the things that are going to get you to your destination. You have to level up. You have to hit the problems. I want to mention Kev as well. Kevin, thank you. You have to have somebody listening to your problems and bouncing back and then allowing you to go to the next level. So I guess summary, invest. And if you're serious about business, I'd suggest you invest with Dan. I'm looking at a 20x return probably on my investment personally, and you can probably add that again on value return. So that's a pretty serious return. I'd say, you should invest in yourself, and you should align to business experts, and you should have them coach you, and you should expect hard work and problems. And I just say to myself, be prepared to do the work.
Right.
When it gets hard, and it will get hard, and the economy will change, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's what will happen. But as long as you still have your vision and want what you want, and remind yourself that you want what you want, and willing to do the work and align with experts and learn, you can do it. You certainly can do it. Anyone can do it, basically.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, thank you, Leighton. Thank you for the generous compliment. And also, I'm glad that you said, because I was going to jump in and say, yeah, but you the one that did the work, right? But it's easier to maintain the enthusiasm and the effort that you have to for a sustained period of time if you're more confident that somebody's got your back and they've got experience having walked the path that you're going down. So very good, sir. So if anyone wants to check you out, Leighton, how can they connect with you, or how can they find out about the business? Is there a website, or are you on LinkedIn? What's the best way they can reach out?
You'd find my website, which is leanforfitness.co.uk, and then you'll be able to see what we do in multiple locations and so forth. So if you wanted to sort of look me up there, and then the rest of it, I'm just generally quietly trying to live my good life with my kids and stuff. That's where I'm at. I'm hoping to be working less and living better. So you probably won't be able to get hold of me.
Good. Well, thank you for the candor. I appreciate it. Well, Leighton, it's been a pleasure. It's been wonderful working with you, and thank you for your generosity of time today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dan.